Okay, so without further ado, welcome to WLT on the Writing Life, Creative Magic with Cecily Sailer. Before we jump into the presentation, I'm just going to introduce our presenter. Cecily Sailer is a creative coach, tarot reader, and founder of Typewriter Tarot, which offers guidance and inspiration to creative spirits through one-on-one coaching, classes and workshops, and artistic community. Cecily holds an MFA in fiction from the University of Houston and worked for 10 years running community-based creative writing programs in Houston and Austin. Her freelance work has appeared in the Texas Observer, Dallas Morning News, Austin Fit Magazine, and other outlets. She lives in Austin with her dog Lady, surrounded by Central Texas birds. Thank you so much, Cecily, for being here, and take it away.
Thank you so much for having me. I want to thank the Writers League for inviting me to do this presentation. I remember the first time I was gifted a Writers League membership. I think I was like 25, which was a long time ago now, and I was aspiring to get into a graduate program. And it's really wonderful to be with all of y'all today as part of Writers League programming. They do so many great things for writers. So thank you. And thank y'all for coming tonight to explore a kind of different side of creativity and the writing process with me. I have a presentation for you. Let me do my best to get that up here. I'm on the wrong slide. Let's see. Not that. Okay. Let me make sure I can also see the chat and then get started. Okay. All right, it is wonderful to see so many people from so many different places. Before we get started, I just want to share a little bit about the experience that I hope to provide for y'all and what will make it a good experience for you. We're going to get into, maybe some of the esoteric and mystical realms. And I don't know how much you exist in those realms already or not, but if not so much, I just invite you to keep an open mind. I really, really would love to hear from you in the chat as we go through this. And I'm going to pose some questions to you, which I don't think we'll have time fully for everyone to reflect on and answer. But if some of these feel like interesting questions for you to explore, I encourage you to jot them down and maybe come back to them as a journaling prompt later. Even if a lot of what I say doesn't land for you, I hope you can find one beautiful, magical, valuable thing in this conversation. And I just like to point to this quote by a paranormal comedian that I enjoy named Ryan Singer. He has a podcast called Me and Paranormal You. And his kind of saying that I really love is that it's more fun to believe. And so even if you're a skeptic out there, it might be fun to just believe for a time and maybe hold that quote as something to consider in your life too. Sam gave me a really wonderful introduction, and I don't want to bore you for too long talking about myself, but I came to this particular way of thinking about creativity and writing, which isn't wholly unique to me, I don't think, but started wanting to be a writer when I was a kid, a fiction writer. I went to UT, not really knowing how to be a fiction writer at UT. I started writing for the student newspaper. I worked there for 3 years. I got a job at what is now Spectrum News and was then News 8 Austin as a producer. And from there, I went into a graduate program for fiction and did the MFA route and came out and worked in nonprofits for about 10 years in Austin, running creative programs. Hey, Deanna, another Daily Texan alum. Yes. So I worked in creative arts nonprofits, running creative writing programs for all ages in the community. And that also had a big role to play in how I think about creativity, how we foster it in young people, and how we foster it among ourselves as adults. I think we really shift as we get older in terms of how we think about creativity. And then I had a big life transformation tarot came into my life. It is an amazing tool for storytelling. And that just opened a rabbit hole where all these worlds kind of collided into using tarot, some esoteric practices, energetic work, that kind of thing to really unleash and unlock our creativity in powerful ways. So I want to start just by asking you all what your creative goals are. You probably have many, but I want you to think about like a single one. You know, if you had to sit down with an agent, or if you were to tell your best friend, like the one thing you're working on, what are you trying to accomplish right now creatively, if anything? I would love to hear from you in the chat. I want to create an entertaining work of art about dragons. I'm at Comic-Con right now, so I appreciate that. Find an agent and traditional publishing, making sense of past struggles through writing. Second that. Finish the edits of my manuscript, find an agent, currently writing sonnets, beautiful, writing daily towards a literary memoir, a third novel, getting through a creative block, revising a novel for publication. I want to write something I love, write a first draft, publish children's picture books. Look at all these beautiful aspirations. I love this. Working on my first novel, corporate espionage, feeling stuck, produce a graphic magazine series for kids with learning disabilities. That's amazing. Pull together too many projects into something I finish. Awesome. Thank you all for sharing that. Keep them coming. I'm going to keep going. So a lot of times when we're creating, we have this goal, like I want to write a book, I want to get it published, I want to have a traditional publisher. And so we set out to do that thing. And we're like so excited about this idea. And we really want that, like that feeling of being published. We want to see our name on that book cover. We want to see our books in the hands of people enjoying them and, you know, getting curious about the stories that we're sharing. But often, like, we have this goal, it feels far away. I want to acknowledge writing, you've heard it before, it's hard, it's solitary. It takes a long time to make a book or to make a project when you're a writer. And so often when we come to the actual work, even though we have this wonderful goal, we find that actually moving toward it is incredibly difficult. And it can be that way for a lot of reasons. And so if that's the case for anyone, or if this is ever the case for you, or even if it's not the case for you now, I think some of the things that we're going to talk about today are just good for having a really healthy connection with your creativity so that it can serve you in achieving your goals rather than having this goal and sort of like making your creativity come with you. So yeah, a couple of you mentioned feeling stuck. A lot of you shared goals. How are those goals going? Like, is it easy? Is it hard? Is it like, are you in a phase of flow? Are you in a phase of struggle? So slow. Okay. Yeah, just feel free to share in the chat. Struggling to stay consistent. Easily distracted, waiting on feedback, taking a little break, struggling to get back to enjoying the words and the characters. Yeah, enjoyment is important. Working to prioritize. Build a routine I can stick to. Easy to get off track, but not too bad. Writing is easy, just sent a first query. Yes, kids at home during the summer, so it's harder. Comes in bursts, kind of randomly. Competitive, perfectionism. Yes, synchronistic experiences. I'm glad you mentioned that. Finding the time, the energy, the creativity. Kelly, writing sonnets has been oddly satisfying because you have to choose words carefully to convey a message. Yes, and you have this little container for what you're making. Okay, so a lot of people are like coming up against some challenge, and that's normal. Anything worth doing is going to be challenging, but we want to be asking, like, is this harder than it needs to be? Yes, switching tasks, especially when we have busy lives. Even if you have like a little snatch of time, can you get into that place? So setting the goals aside for a moment, I want us to like back up and dig a little deeper, as this frustrated gentleman is doing in the photo. And let's talk about what creativity is. What is it? How do you imagine it? How do you experience it? What does it feel like when it's present for you? Please let me know. If you had a definition of creativity, yes, this is a photo from the James Webb Telescope last week. What an amazing set of images. What is creativity? Intelligence at play. Yes, that's a quote. I can't remember from who, if it was Einstein or I think it's someone else. The aha moment, the words just flow. An idea gets in my head and I have to write about it. I feel a tiny part of my brain grow. I love that. The ability to see something out of the ordinary in the ordinary. The minutes flying by unnoticed, being in the moment, external forces at work. Creativity is original and different, but not so much that it makes no sense. Yeah, this kind of like foreign visitor. In the moment, hard to plan it. Usually comes after I stop, letting the theta brain work and working on it in the background. Worrying story problems until something crazy good happens. It appears when I make a connection between an idea and an image that excites me because I wasn't expecting it. Prompts really help spark it for me. Cool. Yeah. So each of us has a unique relationship to creativity. And creativity is an incredibly abstract thing. It's just like, on the one hand, it seems like just a human capacity that we have. Like we are able to solve problems in creative ways. We're able to build civilizations in both creative and harmful ways. We experience creativity kind of like an energy, a thing flowing through us. It's not something we can really easily define. So I want to kind of let you imagine your creativity as something, since we can't really like pin it into a particular source or object or state of mind. And because we each have a unique relationship with it, we can create our own image of what creativity is. So I invite you, if you will join me in this, I invite you to close your eyes just for a few moments. Take a deep breath and let your breath go. Continue maybe with a slower breath, a deeper breath than you've probably had all day, and just hold a question in mind. Creativity, what are you? How are you? Who are you? And see if you get any images, any colors, any movements, any phrases. Notice any feelings you have in your body, any sensations. It's almost as if you are looking into a dark field and suddenly something steps toward you. What might it be? What does it look like? Melanie is already referring to a tarot card. It's wonderful. Take just another moment to see if anything comes for you, to you. It's okay if not. This isn't a very abbreviated connection we're making. Take a final deep breath, bringing in fresh, probably warm air, and exhaling deeply. And coming back into your room. So yes, what is creativity? The Empress, my subconscious childlike view, making connections. Yes, something childlike. I see it as a gift from God, but it's up to us to open it or not. Someone saw hands, fingers, and movement, the mind at play. Yeah, so I want to also say, when you're doing a visualization like this, for some of us, visualizing or imagining something in these kind of meditative spaces is easier for some of us than others. So if you're not someone who easily visualizes, it's still nice to just stay open to sitting with a question in this way. And in one of my newsletter this week, I talked about like imagining creativity as an entity or a being, something with its own consciousness that comes to visit us. And you can imagine it like you could choose one of the stars in this image as a representative, like an avatar, if you will, for your creativity. And once we think of it as like a visitor or something with its own consciousness, then we can start to think about other things. And my next question, someone had a bird, sometimes soaring high, sometimes swooping low, sometimes pumping its wings, sometimes gliding effortlessly. Thank you, Chris. Yeah, so when we can imagine these symbols or take images and animals and creatures and other conscious beings from nature and connect our creativity to those, which is something we might talk about a little later. So if creativity, if you're with me on this premise that creativity might exist as a conscious entity, or it might be more fun to believe that it is, then we can start to think about like, what is our relationship to creativity? You know, if creativity is this conscious being that comes to visit you, taps at your door, on a random night while you're watching Netflix or cooking dinner, what do you do? Like, how do you treat it? You know, if this were like a scene or a date or an encounter, what are the reactions you have? What are the actions you take? Are you, let's see, kind of forgetting my next slide. Someone saw a horse with sunlight behind him that said, I am here. It's a loving relationship. Yes. A multidimensional relationship, connection through dreams, channeling, being in my heart energy. Very cool. So when it comes, I try to open myself to it. Yes. So wonderful. That's a great thing. Like, creativity is such a gift, such a blessing. When it comes to visit, we want to think about like, how are we responding to that? Are we looking like Adam Driver in this very powerful scene from the Marriage Story, where we're like, I can't right now. I can't handle this. Like, I can't do this project justice. What are you doing here? Trying to give me crazy ideas. That's one way we can relate to our creativity. Another way is by, you know, holding this goal in mind that we want to write a book or finish this project. And then we're kind of like, creativity, get here, show up. I need you to like help me get through this and achieve this goal on my timeline, kind of like a extractive resource or something that we can just use on demand. Or yes, are we building a more open, friendly, and loving relationship with our creativity so that when it does come, we are feeling receptive, and we are grateful, and we are excited. each of you are describing some of these different images and possibilities for what creativity can be, and they all sound so beautiful. So like if this horse shining through a radiant sunset shows up to say, I am here, how could we turn it away, right? And how could we treat it as anything other than really sacred? Let's see. So a lot of you are describing like really healthy relationships. And for those who may feel like you have a more adversarial or difficult time with your creativity and you don't know why, there could be so many different reasons. And I feel like blocks or getting stuck sometimes has to do with this, not always. But I just want to point out that, good question, Diane. We'll come to that, I think. So I just want to point out that we are trying to be creative people in a world of many layered systems. So capitalism, patriarchy. We also exist in a world where whiteness is the default. So if we are writers of color, that makes it more difficult to really take our creativity as something valid and worthwhile and valuable. And in a capitalist kind of world, our creativity is often used to make products or make software or make consumable art then that we give over, that can be sold to make other people money, but often we're not even properly fully compensated for that. So creativity is used as an extractive resource in this system. And then we've had teachers, we've had family members who had different reactions to us trying to make our art. And even though we've kind of like gotten over that, our time has passed, often you can be surprised by like how much of that old stuff is actually unconsciously part of your creative process and kind of showing up to protect you from taking risk, from doing something that feels like out of reach for you, or that might brush up against some of these dynamics in your family, in your workplace, in your concept of identity. And it's often harder to like kind of understand what those things are without going a little deeper. Diane, you've asked, how do I welcome creativity and discipline at the same time? Both creativity and discipline are positive things, yes. But I think we also try to like make an arbitrary decision about what discipline is. And then if we don't live up to that discipline, we kind of beat ourselves up for it. Then we feel a little bit stuck, and then it's harder to get going again. And what if we just made a commitment to our project and we decided to show up consistently? And that's kind of a gracious version of discipline. Sometimes I hear a lot of writers say, like, I need a routine. I need to get into a routine. And I'm like, why? Like, maybe you do. Maybe routine is really helpful for you. But we live in a world where routines are given to us constantly. Like, we have to take on a lot of different routines. So do we need to create a whole nother one, or can we create a little bit of like creative thinking around what a routine might be? So what kind of relationship do you want to have with your creativity? And how would you like to relate to your creativity and your creative self? I would love to hear from you in the chat. Give me just 1 second. Okay, so commitment is a good concept. I found I can't short circuit or rush the process, even with deadlines. Yeah. So we just create, like, we want our creativity to perform at this certain level, but creativity isn't like that. You know, your radiant horse that comes like through the sunbeams isn't on your agenda. Like, y'all are collaborators. So you have to figure that out together. I would like it to work with me rather than show up at inconvenient times. I'm looking at you, 1 a.m. Okay, so yeah, you might have a little bit of a trickster creativity, and you might want to talk to it about like, what's up with showing up at 1 a.m. Yeah, show up for whatever shows up for me. Passion. Yes, this is a relationship. So why don't we make it like the most exciting relationship we could have? Make it passionate, make it fun, make it flirty, make it sexy. I'd like it to be natural, just organically part of me, a good partnership, a conversation. Yes. So we also tend to think sometimes, not to speak for everyone, but like creativity is like over here. I have this life, this professional life, or this family life, or whatever. And I do that most of the time. And then my creativity, I go like visit it. You know, maybe you're treating your creativity like an undercover lover where you're like working on your projects underground, but then when you see each other at the grocery store, it's like, you know, persona non grata, right? So like, what if we lived life in a creative way? What if we brought creativity into our way of living, making it natural? Discipline is my creative enemy, unfortunately. That is very good to know, because you can work with that. So when we ask some of these questions, we can start to figure out like what actually works for me and my creativity and what doesn't. So I've kind of harped on this in roundabout ways without fully saying it yet, but relationships are everything. The way we relate to our children, to our pets, to our lawn, like, you know, are we trying to like use a ton of water to make our lawn look perfect when really it doesn't like support that many animals or natural habitat? Or are we like lovingly caring for our garden and kind of like letting it be what it is? Our relationship to our car, like we have all this stuff in our life, our jobs, our partners, our kids, our friends, but it's not just like accruing relationships to have a lot of them. It's also about the way the relationships are, the quality of those relationships. And so we can think about this in terms of how we relate to our creativity too. We can create that relationship in the way that we want to. We can create it in a way that dignifies our creativity. We need to remember that it is a relationship. And when we think in those terms, some really cool things become possible. Learning to separate the deeply embedded idea that what I do has to have a financial reward or is not worth doing. The creative impulse must pay for itself has been a long standard in society. That is very hard to overcome. Thank you for sharing that, Pat. That is real. And a lot of creative people, I think, carry this thought like, well, what good is it if it doesn't make me money? So this is like exactly what capitalism wants us to be thinking. It wants us to take our creativity into the marketplace and provide it for others so that money can be made off of it by someone. But when it comes to creating individually, notice how difficult the path is to get an agent, find a traditional publisher, or even navigate self-publishing, which then is another part of like the economy. So all of those thoughts are like, you know, that's not, Pat, for example, this thought you have is not one that is like natural to you. You didn't come to this planet believing like, oh, my creativity needs to make me money. That's one that was like modeled for you all over, for all of us, all over the place, until we believe it ourselves. And so we can always take a pause and say, is this serving me? Who does this thought really serve? And do I want to keep upholding that? It might be like my best, or at least a good friend. That's wonderful, Charles. Yes, creativity is one of those few things like we have solely unto ourselves. I try to look at it like, do it for yourself. If no one ever reads it, will you love to read it? Bonus if it touches one other person. Perfect. Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about that too, being of service. Like, who are you writing for? A lot of times you're actually writing to create the thing you wish you had read. So how amazing and like sacred is that, to give yourself the gift that the world has not given you? So thinking about creative magic or thinking about creativity in some of these ways, we can go from like this sort of hunched over, resentful, angry, disheartened writer to something more like this. We can use intention, we can use ritual to reshape and reclaim our relationship to creativity. And when that relationship is in alignment, that flow just comes more easily. It's basically about clearing the blocks that make it hard to achieve your goals or to find or feel a sense of discipline or to come to show up for the commitment, even when you don't feel motivated. There's something in you that's constantly talking yourself out of it. But the more you like really acknowledge and honor what creativity is, whatever that means for you, the more the more fun, freeing, joyous, passionate it will be to use your creativity. And I think we all want to be, here's a unicorn bursting through the woods. So what do I mean by magic? Start with the premise that like energy is energy, right? We don't actually know what energy is. We only know its manifestations. So a car driving down the street, that's got energy. Like a weather system, that's like energy in motion. A flame burning, that's energy churning. So we can see energy take all of these shapes, but we don't actually know like what the energy is. That's the mystery. And if energy connects everything, like we have an energetic field around our bodies, how can we just use that? Like, we don't have to necessarily invent a contraption or like learn how to harness electricity. We can actually harness energy, which is magic in my, like they're kind of equivalent, even though we could have a whole nother like conversation arguing over this. But if energy is everywhere, and even if our thoughts have energy, our feelings have energy, how can we work with that so we're not like subject to the whims of the energy around us or creating energy that gets in our own way, but we're creating energy and moving it a little bit so it's in service to our intentions. That's how I think about magic. I can't imagine doing anything with my writing, even though I really want others to read what I've said. Okay, Forrest, you can't imagine doing anything with your writing. Well, you have come to a writing discussion, so you are doing something with your writing. And that desire to want others to read what you've said, that is like a flame in the dark that you can keep following. And maybe some of what I offer in a moment could help you take another step. So my business is called Typewriter Tarot. Tarot is kind of like my main buddy in all of this work, or it's where I started. And it's a really beautiful tool. It's a storytelling tool. Tarot is a visual storytelling apparatus. Every tarot deck has a set of 78 cards that contain archetypes that reflect different aspects of the human experience. And so it's a way of thinking about story and storytelling using using visual language rather than trying to think in intellectual language in our minds. Let's see. Yes. So what is it? It started as like a card game and turned into more decorative art. This was in the 1400s in Italy, and wealthy families would commission artists to create these ornate decks. And then other things were added. They were infused with these archetypes. It evolved into a divination tool. There's a lot of like mixing and merging in terms of tarot's lineage, but I believe it works by allowing us to interface with our unconscious, with our subconscious, with our connection to the collective consciousness. A lot of the archetypes you see here would be recognizable in some way to humans across time and across geography, even if like it kind of depends on the way the image resonates, but all of these archetypes have been part of human existence. So tarot is just like a material item that can help us interface with these energies, like what's going on more deeply inside us. It's hard to kind of like connect with magic from ground zero and like just, oh, okay, now I'm gonna like try making magic. But tarot is actually like a tangible visual message that you can start to decode, even if you don't understand traditional tarot meanings. Anyone can use it. Anyone can use it. Anyone can use it. I had a tarot deck for 15 years that I never touched because I thought you needed a psychic grandma to tell you like how to use it and sort of induct you into tarot reading. But decks are pretty affordable. They travel really well and they're really pretty to look at. So like, why not use them? You don't have to know anything about tarot to have an interesting experience with it. I learned that the hard way and wish I'd been using that deck sooner. But you can start simply by like pulling a card every day, looking at it for a minute or two and writing about what you see. Go through your day, see how the card and what you noticed in that card might be talking to you about what's happening in your life so that you have a personal connection with the card. And then you can like look up the meaning at the end of the day and see if it speaks to you at all. So we're going to try, let's see. We'll go through this quickly. I want you to choose a question from this list that feels like a question you want to know the answer to. Once you have that question chosen, please put it in the chat. Melanie's grandma used playing cards. Okay, choosing your questions, all good questions. I have a question for you too. Number 1, 2, 3. Okay, what do I need to see or know? I'll give y'all another minute to choose. Okay, good. People making their own questions. Cool. All right. Got your question. You made your choice. I'm going to give you, this is a artificially cultivated tarot experience for the sake of brevity. But magic works in all kinds of ways. So I don't think we're deprived of anything. Looking at this picture, see which card your eye is drawn to, which card is calling to you. Remember its number. Give you a minute to make your choice. Okay. Trust you'll have chosen your card. I am going to change the slide in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so here are 4 cards. The number you selected is the card that is the answer to your question tonight. And go ahead and like take a screenshot of this card. Try to take a mental picture of it if you prefer that. And I'll give you a little bit of information about each one before we move on. The magician is a powerful creator. The magician is one who alchemizes and uses the elements available to them to create what was once just an image or an idea or a vision and turn it into something that exists in the material world. The fool is one who is embarking on a new journey, stepping into the unknown. You can see about to step off a cliff, but has a little friend and ally at her feet and wearing, just like an outfit with some flair, having fun. The sun is out. This is like beginning a new story, stepping into embarking on a journey that we don't exactly know where it's going to take us. 10 of Swords is like our burnout card, mental exhaustion, beating yourself up with your mind until you can't hardly stand it anymore. And also getting to a breaking point where you're ready for something different, something to change. The High Priestess is a representative of our intuition. So working with tarot is a really great way to actually nurture the High Priestess in you and to understand what your intuition is, how it talks to you, and just like when you have that connection built more strongly, which is a very subtle, strange, hard to like detect kind of process, but over time we really can cultivate that intuitive connection so that just making decisions, going in a direction becomes easier. We know what to trust. So I encourage you to take whichever card you got tonight and reflect on that, maybe journal on what this card is trying to tell you. If you are new to tarot, I encourage you to get a deck. The Smith Rider-Waite deck is a traditional deck that's been around since the early 1900s. And so it's been widely used in America, especially like through the 60s. So a lot of the books and podcasts and things out there are based on the Rider-Waite, and it's a good starting deck before you jump off to something else. The one we were just looking at was the Modern Witch Tarot, which is a really close interpretation of the Rider-Waite deck, but more modern, also more feminine. As I mentioned, pulling a card daily and reflecting and journaling. What happens with tarot when we go to it with a question is that we have to craft a question that's specific, clear, and reflective of like the problem or the issue we're trying to clarify. So often just getting to the place where you're asking the question you need to ask is half the unlocking of the thing. Instead of just like feeling frustrated, blocked, annoyed, mad at yourself, mad at your creativity, try to whittle that down, like what's really going on? What question do I need to ask? And getting even there is a huge like energy shift. So it's a good practice for creating those questions. It also is a good practice for listening to your intuition, as I've said, and there's very little barrier to entry. Why not try it? It's weird. It's fun. It makes life interesting. I've never been bored with tarot. Some other ways to cultivate creative magic in your life is to work with the lunar phases. New moons are beginnings, full moons are culminations. Just connecting with the moon, writing a poem, doing some of your work on a lunar calendar rather than like the academic calendar or the like just Western calendar, but something more attuned to nature. Nature also has its seasons of dying and withering and growth and expansion. So we can tune into time in a different way. We can set intentions and choose our thoughts. That's magical work. And maybe it's like, sounds like therapy, but like they're not necessarily mutually exclusive, right? Are you talking, let's see, Chris, are you talking about the deck on this slide? This is just an image, but the cards that we looked at in the line were the Modern Witch deck. So if you notice certain kinds of thoughts you're having that are not helpful, that are holding you back, then what are some neutral thoughts you can start trying to feed yourself, or how can you disrupt your thought patterns, at least by becoming aware? That's an energetic shift. That's magic. You can also create an altar to a project or to a character. So I think someone's knocking on our hotel room door. Sorry if you heard that. And we may, okay. Not right now, thank you. Sorry about that, you guys. Or y'all, I should say. Creating an altar to a project or a character, even if the project isn't active, that may be a project that actually does need an altar, especially if you're feeling like there's a lot of clogged energy around having something finished, but not putting it out in the world. So that can produce a lot of feelings of failure, even though it's very common to have finished something and not have a place for it yet. So how can you honor the work that you've done and the project that you put so much like love and energy and effort into? Maybe like find belongings or natural objects or colors or flowers or foods or beverages that you could put in a little space that kind of honors the character of that work or a specific character that you're actually working with. I highly encourage morning pages just for kind of like cleansing your brain. I started buying just like the cheapest notebook from CVS so that there's no possibility for like me getting hung up on perfectionism, even in my journaling practice, which is something that I'm definitely susceptible to. So just writing like 3 handwritten pages at the start of your day or whenever you can, just to get your brain moving, your pen moving, your hand moving, your thoughts moving. I also highly encourage you to connect with your dreams, write down dreams that you have, notice the symbols and the feelings that show up in your dreams, talking about them with friends, and also connecting with a creative ancestor. So that can be someone in your actual bloodline or in your family lineage who was a creative person, asking questions about them, starting to understand some of the struggles they faced and the work they created. But you can also have a chosen ancestor of like an artist, a writer, someone who feels like a guide and an inspiration to you. And that could be like writing a letter to someone, or like sitting down and having kind of like an imaginary conversation with them. And then I finally encourage you to incorporate ritual into your writing, which helps you transition from the busyness of life into a creative space without having so much of the carryover of your daily energy into the creative space. I talked earlier about letting the creative space kind of take, flood, infuse the rest of your life. But when you're going to the creative space, especially initially, if you're trying to like recultivate this relationship, I encourage you to create a little protection and separation by closing your eyes, setting an intention, clearing the thoughts you don't need, lighting a candle, and then closing your session when you're done. Don't just like shut your laptop and walk away. But instead of like maybe writing down word count, you can write a sentence of gratitude. Like, I'm grateful that I spent 30 minutes with my creativity on a really busy day. And those are the objectives. Those are the milestones rather than how many pages you wrote, how many words you got, how close or far you are from your deadline. Thank y'all for sharing some of these resources with each other. Oracle cards kind of have a different system than tarot, but they're also great to use. They are easier to connect with because they just have more in each card. And in terms of ritual, just really quickly, a ritual is an intentional act. It's a series of steps that we take infused with that intention. Usually we're reaching out to something other than ourselves. So that can be your creativity, that can be the ancestor, that can be the divine energy of the universe. And we can use in a ritual, we can kind of set our commitments, and we can end rituals sometimes with the phrase, so be it or better. So if we're trying to cultivate more flow in our creativity, that might be an intention we put into a ritual. And then we finish with so be it or better. I could do a whole class on ritual, and I know I'm running low on time. I'm curious before we get to questions, what feels like it's shifted for you, anything that's changed, anything you do want to commit to, even like the smallest little thing around your creativity after this. This is also something you can reflect on, but I'll leave that question hanging in the chat, actually. I like the idea of having a relationship with my creativity, investing in that and treating it well. Yeah, like what if that's your only goal is just like build some trust, get to know each other again, um, have fun, go on a date. That's all you have to do. Then your creativity will start giving you like lots of information, lots of ideas, because it'll be like, oh, my writer friend is really treating me nicely. So if this kind of thing is of interest to you, I support people in this work through creative coaching, that kind of finding and rebuilding that relationship, using different kind of magical practices to support our creative work. There's a beautiful blending that happens in that space. Tarot readings can be great to take your questions to. Classes and workshops that blend tarot and writing together. We also have a monthly creative coven where we take you through a collective ritual, and the ritual is for the nourishment of your creativity. Oh, there's Al. Thanks, Al. We also have a membership program where you get regular tarot spreads and writing rituals and prompts. And in my newsletters every week, I really try to give you some inspiration and good thoughts for having and cultivating the most joyous, lovely, juicy relationship with your creativity. I want to end with a little, oh, just a moment. I teared up when you mentioned ancestors, and I thought of a meaningful departed person right away. Just thinking of her is making me smile and touch some joy. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. So just these little, like it seems like a small connection, but then a really powerful thing can come out of that. Connecting with this departed ancestor more intentionally over time could be so fascinating, so loving, so supportive. I want to share this Mary Oliver section of Mary Oliver poem. I know you never intended to be in this world, but you're in it all the same. So why not get started immediately? I mean, belonging to it. There is so much to admire, to weep over, and to write music or poems about. So why wait? And this quote from Audre Lorde: when I dare to be powerful, to use my strength in service of my vision, then it becomes less and less important whether I am afraid. So that kind of takes us to this idea of service. Who are you trying to serve with your creative work? Who do you want to reach? When we kind of connect to the why and the who we do it for, we can get out of our own like mind drama, because we're going to a place of service, which is like tangential, I think, to this quote, but inspired by it. So what questions can I answer? I will stop talking. Sam, I'm sorry if I went too long.
No, not at all. Thank you so much for that. That was amazing. Just the way that you talk about creativity, I think is going to be life-changing for a lot of people, including myself. But yeah, so if anyone in the audience has any lingering questions, you can drop them in the chat box, or you can drop them in the Q&A box, and we will get to as many as we can. So first question, besides pulling a card daily, are there other rituals you recommend?
This can be so many different things. So it could be morning pages. It could be sitting outside on your porch and seeing if an animal comes by, if you have like a little natural space. It could be making a cup of tea and like connecting with that creative ancestor. It could be fluid. Like some days you're not doing the ritual necessarily, or you do the ritual every new or full moon. It's such anything you do that brings some positive intention and some action to it. Like just sitting on the couch thinking like, gosh, I really wish I would write a book is not super intentional. It's like just wishing things were different, right? But ritual is, I know what my intention is, like, and I'm going to do a creative act, however small, around supporting that intention. So sometimes that could be like gathering materials from nature and making a little like artistic formation out of them and being like, creative ancestor, I leave this for you on my porch to enjoy. Like you can make it up. Any of the other things I mentioned as things you can try are other great rituals as well.
Thank you. Next question. I'm finding some tarot card decks on Amazon that say it contains 45 cards, but you said a deck is 70 plus cards. Is it normal to get only half a deck?
It is not normal. So a tarot deck usually is 78 cards. And then archetype decks or oracle decks could have any number of cards, but the tarot system usually has 78. So you might start with those 2 decks I've mentioned, and also make sure that when you do get a deck, it's often hard to see what all of the art looks like, but to the extent you can, it might be nice to go to a witch shop and like find some, or like a crystal shop or whatever, and pick out a deck that feels like it wants to go home with you.
Oh, that's a great idea. All right, next question. Can you please talk more about disrupting negative thought patterns and choosing our thoughts?
Yeah, that's a great question and a whole like lifelong practice. So you might, one thing I encourage you to do when you try to sit down to create and you start to feel the hesitation, notice like what thought is happening in your mind, or ask yourself like, what am I thinking? And it might be something like, you can't do this, or you're going to spend hundreds of hours on this and like no one's going to care. Writing this is just going to piss off your family. You know, like what are the little thoughts that would absolutely make you want to stop writing, and write them down so that you can see them. And maybe write them on half a piece of paper that's folded in half. On the other side, you don't want to try to create like the completely most exotic, amazing, like wonderful thought that's the opposite of the negative thought you're having, because your nervous system is going to be like, no, I don't believe that. No way. You just want to go to a more neutral thought, like, I have the right to exercise my creativity. It's fun and nourishing for me to be creative. So you kind of take your brain out of, you can't do this, into like, it's cool for me to do this. It's okay. It's fine. And you want to kind of do that, or notice that, or look at that thought, or put it on a Post-it in your mirror and look in your own eyes and say it to yourself. You'll notice like, wow, this makes me feel incredibly uncomfortable. And that's because your nervous system is really fighting it. It wants to like keep you protected. And that's how it works. So the more you kind of train your brain to think this other thought, this neutral thought, it will slowly kind of recalibrate your nervous system till you get to a place where like that thought feels very available. And then you can be like, I can write a book. I'm going to write a really amazing book. Like, I'm going to write a book that is really going to move someone. I'm going to write a book that's going to move a lot of people. And, you know, you can take publishing out of it. You can take other things out of it. You're really just like trying to have a better relationship with yourself. You're looking for those thoughts where it's like, would you say this to your best friend? And maybe be like, when you catch the thought, be like, don't talk to my best friend that way. You know, have fun with it. Have fun. You know, don't additionally beat yourself up for having a negative thought. Be like, oh, that thought is really not helpful. Like, okay, let me give myself a little love.
Yeah, thank you. This is just like therapy.
All
right. Next question. All of this is exactly what I needed to hear right now. How do I get in touch with you for coaching, etc.?
Ooh, I love this question. There is an inquiry form on my website, and you just fill it out and I will reach out to you. It's on the homepage, so you'll see a creative coaching thing. There's inquire here. There's a short form to fill out. And when I get that form, I will reach out to you and we will schedule a 1-hour coaching session where you get to experience what that's like. And we can talk about what's going on with you, how I could potentially support you.
Great, thank you so much. Well, it doesn't look like there are any other questions in the chat box, so I think it's a good place to end. But again, thank you, Cecily, for this awesome presentation. There are just so many good things in it, and I know this is something that so many of us are going to want to keep rewatching. So thank you, and have a great night, everyone.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you for having me.
Bye.
Bye.